Technical difficulties. Here we are. We're in the bar. We are live on Facebook. I'm just going to have to try. I think I've selected the wrong camera. So let's see if that changes things at all. It does a little bit, doesn't it? There we go. Right. Good afternoon. Welcome to episode 103 of the Stacey West podcast. I'm your host, Ben, and with me, as always, is No, that's right. I'm Gary, and Ben, who is normally with us as always, is not with us today because computer games are more important. In seriousness, obviously, there's two new consoles coming out. Ben does next gen base. Absolutely snowed under yesterday, and we were going to film tonight, but if we did that, it comes out tomorrow. It's a Forest Green preview. By the time it kicks off, the game's played. Do you know what I mean? So we've agreed. I'll do a quick Forest Green preview on here. We'll talk a tiny little bit about the game this week against Portsmouth. Your comments are going to be really important today, so get those comments in. If you're available and you're stuck there with a webcam, I might even be able to get you on. We shall see. Not going to run too long, to be honest. So it is what it is. Let's address the elephant in the room for those watching on video. If you're listening on the podcast, I'll describe what things look like. I am sat in my bar, as you see me on Match Day Live, wearing my Lincoln City hoodie with my stuff in the background. But on my face is a moustache that makes me look like I was one of those wonderful men in their flying machines. I'm raising money for Movember, so the beard's gone completely. I have a bald chin. I haven't seen my chin in 2 or 3 years. We've remade our acquaintance, and it will be covered up by Christmas. But my top lip is still very warm. I've put a link in the bio. I'll also put it on the description for the podcast. We're up to 273 quid, which is phenomenal. I only intended to raise £100. You can choose the male charity, the male health charity that we're raising for. I chose male mental health, obviously something that I've been kind of a key driver behind in recent years, hopefully trying to kind of promote awareness, talking to people and that sort of thing. So just 27 quid shy of 300, which would be phenomenal. Really tough times, not pressuring anyone to donate. If you can donate a quid, brilliant. If you can't, you can't. Do you know what I mean? That's the way things are at the moment. So, right. So I don't have anybody to banter with. I've got nobody calling me a prick. I have done some notes as per usual, and you can see them. So if you're listening, it's kind of what happens. No, but Ben, no, as I say, I obviously desperately miss Ben. It's not a real podcast, is it, without Ben? Just me talking, not really, nobody else's opinions. But what I want to do is just talk a tiny little bit about Portsmouth, and then a bit about Forest Green, how they're going to approach it, who their key players are, and how I see us lining up. Got a couple of people watching at the moment. Jake Tong, who is obviously a big contributor to the Stacey West, says, "Hell, this is strange." I think he means the face, not me doing the podcast on my own, but who knows. Emily Rook knows how to sweet talk a podcast host. Good afternoon, nice Tash. Thank you very much. My dad always had a Tash when I grew up, so there's something rather manly about it, I think. I'm going to, a little bit later, go into the house, smoke a cigar and swear at the television. We'll move on to Portsmouth, and Chris Keneally is straight in with a comment. Portsmouth was always going to happen, mate. Nearly half the possible starting 11 out through injury. Not the end of the world by a long stretch, and just highlights the differences between us and the money men in this league. Some fair points made there. First of all, on Match Day Live, I did say I thought we would lose the game. We did. It depends very much on which Portsmouth turn up, and we've been quite unfortunate because every time we've played Portsmouth, we seem to have caught them when they're on the up rather than on the down. You know, they have had some bad runs in the past. They've now beat us 3 times in our last 3 meetings. I don't think we've beaten them since 1982. It was nice to finally score against them. But that early goal really gave us a kick, didn't it? I mean, John Marquis is a proper centre forward. And I don't mean Tom Hopper any disservice, but there's a difference between what, say, 125 buys you, 1,000 buys you, and what 2 million or however much it was buys you. He was angry, he was aggressive, he was all over the place. He's got a touch of quality about it, and I can tie that in a little bit with Forest Green. Of a couple of years ago, because I did an article earlier on, I kind of rehashed an article earlier on when we beat Forest Green 3-1 in March 2017, and the point I made then was, if it wasn't for Christian Deutsch, they wouldn't have been promoted. Now, I'm not saying it's all on Marquis why Portsmouth are doing well. I mean, Marcus Harness is a great player, Ronan Curtis is a great player, Tom Naylor is a real unsung hero. But if you've got that guy up front who will take chances when they come his way, you're going to be better off than most. And Deutsch was the same at Forest Green. Forest Green, were they any better that year than Dagenham, for instance, or were they any better than some of the other teams that were chasing us, Dover? Well, perhaps Dover because they had Ricky Miller, but certainly, if you put Christian Deutsch in any of those sides, probably they finish in the same sort of place as Forest Green. So, and I think that was the difference with John Marquis. Let me just consult my notes and see what else I wrote about that. The other thing was, that's right, you can't see that normally when I do the podcast, and if you're listening, it's going to be very odd. So we actually lost the ball more than we have at any other point this season. 132 times we lost the ball, according to Wyscout. And I think that's interesting as well, because I think there's a degree of what Chris was saying there about, players being injured, just kind of breaks up our play, it breaks up our patterns, and therefore I think we saw more of it falling down. I think when you look across the back four, Lewis Monsma fit would have started. Max Melbourne, arguably fit, would start at left back. Joe Walsh fit, potentially plays into place of Adam Jackson. And Adam Jackson's an odd one because Tomo gave him man of the match. He got rave reviews for the way that he played. But Murray Pete messaged me and said, I've just seen your 3 goals. Jackson at fault for them all. Whether that's perception, I don't know. I thought he had a decent game, to be honest. But Joe Walsh probably would have played. Liam Bridcut would have played. Callum Morton, arguably would have played. So, yeah, we did have half the first 11 out. But when you've got 3 of your back 4 out, which again, and I say arguably because, it is down to interpretation. But when you've got 3 of back 4 out and you're coming up against Marcus Harness, who's a phenomenal footballer, in my opinion, John Marquis, who I've already spoken about, Ronan Curtis, who's excellent as well, you're in real trouble. If you've got those 3 in your team, and they did have last season, Portsmouth should be in the top 2. And for me, it's still a reflection on Kenny Jackett, still a reflection on the fact that they shouldn't be in this division right now, not with those players last season. And remember, they had Brett Pittman, who could come in and kind of shake it up a little bit last season as well. So being where they are now, they're not happy. They're not happy with the fact that they're still below us. If they finish outside the top 2, their fans are not going to be happy. If we finish inside the top 10, we'll be delighted. And I think that tells you everything about where the 2 teams are and why losing wasn't such a surprise. What did surprise me massively was the way that we bounced back from 3-0 down, and it could have been 4-0 down. And I think the changes helped. I think Harry added something on the right-hand side, and with hindsight, might have started, but we don't know what the fitness situation is with him. But I do think that the way that we responded, but other teams could have crumbled. Nicky, you could say at 3-0 we did crumble, and that period, half-time to about 65 minutes, was horrible to watch. It was like watching Charlie getting mauled by a Doberman and me not being able to go in and do anything about it. But I thought we came back resolutely. I think after we'd got the goal, if we'd managed to go on and get another one, it would have been a really nervy finish, because I think Portsmouth perhaps crumble a little bit when they're under pressure because of the pressure that is placed upon them by their support. I mean, the cowbells were outside the ground. What sort of numpty drives from Portsmouth to Lincoln when he can't even see the game? Yeah, a dedicated numpty, that's who. But that just, again, that shows you the level, I think, that Portsmouth are at. It was a tough game. We were always expected to lose it. Also, our passing stats weren't great, 78%, which was on a par with Charlton and Blackpool, I believe, when we played them. Every other time we've been more accurate. So we were less accurate in the past. We gave the ball away more. Not to a degree where I thought we were woeful, but to a point where if you do it against sides who are top 6, potentially top 2, it's going to make a big difference. What I would say is it's also interesting, the number of teams we've played this year who I have said they should be up there. Charlton, Oxford, Blackpool, Portsmouth, Ipswich. There's 5. Not everyone can be up there because Peterborough, Sunderland, Hull should be. So there would be 8 teams already. If you finish below those teams, you've still had a decent season. If you're only one place below them, and that's without Doncaster, who I said should be up there. So there's your top 10. Well, there's your top 9 above us before we've even started. Hugely competitive league. Massive difference between the haves and the have-nots, and we're seeing that, I think, now in the way, for instance, Shrewsbury and Burton, real strugglers this season. And I think we're doing really well not to be lumped in with them. And I think that's purely it's not down to budget, because the budget has been slashed. Don't forget that. What we're doing now, we're doing on less budget than last season. No reflection on last year's manager. Not kind of criticising him, but bear in mind that the budget has been slashed and we're still in the top 6. If it gets to Christmas and we're still on the top 10, in my opinion, we'll have done a really good job. And it might look like decline from being top, but I think it's more like settling of contents during transit is probably a better way to describe it. Okay, so let's move on to Forest Green. I'll do that in a second. Gav Hughes says he's a championship player. Not sure who I was talking about when Gav said that, so my apologies, Gav. Possibly John Marquis, I believe. Jake, don't think we should panic after back-to-back defeats. We've come up against 2 sides that are touted to be up there come the end of the year. Still a very strong start, nearly accumulated half our points from last year within 11 games. Sensational. Absolutely right. No need to panic at all. Even if we were to lose a couple more, probably not on the bounce, but if we were to go on that run where you pick up 1 or 2 wins in 4 or 5, still shouldn't panic. I still think that there is a lot more to come from this side. And when you think about, we had 4 or 5 players out who would almost certainly be playing against Portsmouth. It just, again, it reflects, I think, well on the side and on the result. And I never thought I'd say that about a 3-1 home defeat. By the way, the injuries don't get any better. For those who don't know, but we'll have a look at that when we come to it on Forest Green. Richard Cross, we gave the ball away in dangerous areas and they punished us. I really don't think they were that much better than us without injuries. Absolutely. And you know what's really frustrating? When we lost at Portsmouth last year, I didn't think they were that much better than us. And when they beat us at home last year, I didn't think they were that much better than us. The support was, but I don't think when you look at the players that they've got, that they mauled us. Do you know what I mean? I don't think it was that bad. Which again is testament to, I think Michael was in charge of all of those games. It's testament to where we are, competitively against teams that play football the right way. We're right up there. My concern comes when we play against teams who don't play the right way or are perceived not to play the right way. I'd be a hypocrite to say don't play the right way, because when Danny and Nicky were in charge, it was fine that people, we got the ball forward quickly. So just because Gillingham and Northampton and the likes of those do it doesn't necessarily mean it's the wrong way to play football. But it's the way that you say it when you're not playing that way, isn't it? It's almost like snobbery. And Dave Roberts, last of all, good afternoon, Dave. I haven't forgot the dog walk. Me and Dave have been trying to plan a dog walk for a while now, but it's just my calendar is so packed, and not playing computer games either, apparently, recording podcasts on Friday afternoons. So, sorry, Ben. Oh, actually, there we go. Chris Keneally's weighed in with good afternoon, prick. So Chris Keneally's calling me a prick on behalf of Ben, which is fantastic. Thanks for that, Chris. I will remember that. You might bastard. Right, so Forest Green Rovers. What can we expect? We know to a degree what we can expect with Forest Green because the manager hasn't changed in several years. It's still Cooperman, Mark Cooper. Not a huge fan. Gritted teeth now. You have to begrudgingly have some respect for the longevity of the manager. This is a club that spent a lot of money to get where they are. They have these huge ambitions. I think at times they are hypocrites. I think at times the message and the method are not quite on point. But they've stuck with their manager. They're not a Salford. They don't kick him out when he struggles. And there have been times when Cooper's struggled a little bit. So respect for that. Look, I could criticise Forest Green all day long. You know it. I know it. I could sit here. I've done 14 minutes. I could do another 14 minutes just on how much I dislike Forest Green. But from an objectivity point of view, and from taking the Lincoln City glasses off and my kind of personal beliefs off, you've got to respect. And they're right up there this season. They're doing really well in the league. They're winning games comfortably by looking at some of their stats. They've got some good players across the side who I'm going to come to in a moment. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if they're not there or thereabouts come the end of the season. There's always a question with Forest Green around have they got the balls to do it? It's all right playing on the nice pitches, but can they do it when they go away to the kind of big aggressive teams? And you only have to look at how they dealt with us over 6 matches in our recent history where we've won every single one. Let's get that one in. And we weren't particularly big and aggressive. Who scored the last 3 goals, I think it was, or 3 of the last 4 goals against Forest Green for Lincoln? Johnny Kindy. Again, that kind of goes to show you the kind of striker that they don't like to play against, tells you the type of football they don't like to play against. But it's not the type of football we purvey now. It's not the type of striker we've got now. So it's going to be particularly interesting. At the moment, they're playing a 3-4-1-2, so they play like a back 3. They play what I would call the double 6s. I know some people argue that 6 is a centre-back, so the double 4s, double 5s, whatever you want to call them, but 2 holding midfielders, more or less, 2 wide players, and then at a kind of an arrangement up top, it might be kind of just a 1 striker with 2 behind him. They have played that, so like a little triangle with Jamil Matt here and Eliot Whitehouse kind of behind and another player, or 1 in the hole and then 2 strikers. And with the 2 strikers, it could be Aaron Collins, it could be Matt Stevens, it could be Jamil Matt. There's 3 for a start, all good strikers. So if we start at the back then, I've written a couple of names down here. One of them I don't have to, but they've got 2 young lads on either side of the back 3 who are ball players, exactly the type of player that Michael Appleton would want to buy to play in our back 4. So they will play out from the back like we do, which may suit us, to be fair. We know that they do that. They lost against us 2-1 a couple of years ago, thanks to Johnny Kindy Brace, because they kept playing out from the back. They stuck to their principles and it didn't work. They've got a lad Kitchen and Godwin, I believe it's Malif, you know what I'm like with names. They play either side of Jordan Moore-Taylor. Moore-Taylor is, for me, a League One quality defender. I've described him in the past as a Rolls Royce as a defender. He was at Exeter City when they were promoted. He was at MK Dons, kind of followed Paul Tisdale around. I really like Moore-Taylor. And if these 2 kids either side are as good as the Forest Green supporters I've spoken to in the past believe they are, it's a really interesting back 3, that dynamic, because they're going to play the ball around. They're going to want to get forward. There's going to be lots of possession in that area. And I can see our forwards having to work really hard. I'll come on to our team selection later. The one thing that they probably don't have there is the big bruiser centre-half, the nasty bugger. So set pieces may be beneficial for us depending on who plays, because although look, all professional defenders are going to be able to handle set pieces, they don't have the animal, they don't have the Manny Monther, for instance, they don't have the Sean Raggett, who would rather get his nose pushed through the back of his head than shirk a challenge. They don't quite have a defender like that. They don't have a defender that's going to give it some of that when the ball comes in. They don't have the type of player, in my opinion, who's going to throw Robbie Gotts around like a rag doll, which at times the Portsmouth lads did. And if Jamie Sewell were fit, which he's not, it could have been a good game for him. You move into the midfield. They've actually got somebody I class as a former imp. He never actually signed for us. He did play for us on trial when we first came out of the non-league, which is Boué Adams. He came on trial from Norwich. I saw him play, I think, against Lincoln United. He's done really well for himself since he's not been signed by us. Really good midfielder for this level, and he plays alongside Carl Winchester. Now, Carl Winchester was a player a couple of years ago I seem to remember as being vaguely linked with, but he was Cheltenham and he moved to Forest Green. Really, really experienced midfielder. Probably not League One quality, but certainly top 2 or 3 League Two quality all day long. He can control the play. He's tough in the tackle, so that's going to be quite interesting. He's probably the most kind of type player. Do you know that I mean, I'm doing that for visual purposes. But if you're listening to the podcast, he's the type that might leave an elbow in, that might go down to the dark arts, which Mark Cooper really likes. So that's going to be really interesting. Now, when you go further forward, the players that really stand out for me, and as I've mentioned already, Jamil Matt, he's a nasty striker. He's a nasty one to play against. He scored a hat-trick earlier in the season for them. I think he's got 5 overall, so he's not as prolific as you might think. But I think he was at Newport a couple of years ago, and I remember being really impressed with him. They've got Matt Stevens, a young lad that was at Barnet and Peterborough. He scored 5 in 7 for them, and I think he's got 3 in 3 through his last matches. I seem to, and again, I'm kind of doing this from memory, but I seem to think that he's kind of a fox in the box type striker. He doesn't always start for them, so it might be that he comes from the bench, but they certainly have options, because you throw Aaron Collins in with that as well, 23-year-old, another mobile striker, loves to get the ball into his feet, knows a goal when it comes his way. Any of those would sit on our bench now and come on for the last 20 minutes, in my opinion, with no problem at all, especially as we technically don't really have anybody in that respect. So they've got strength in depth. Eliot Whitehouse is the last one I mentioned. He's not really found his feet as yet at Forest Green. We know what he's all about. He is playing there occasionally. He does normally double up in a kind of 2-10s, like this is 2-10s sometimes behind Matt. So that's when they're going to look to try and get the ball into Matt, be it into his feet from the wide areas. Those two are then going to be coming round and off him. Lots and lots of movement up front. We're going to need to be bang on it, I think, in terms of our centre forward play, our central defence this week. So it's going to be fascinating, absolutely fascinating to see who we play. But that's Forest Green. We know they're going to attack. As I said, they score goals. I think they've only scored more than 2 on probably 2 or 3 occasions this season. So, although they are a danger, they're not like a Peterborough who will go and score 4, 5, 6, 7 or whatever Peterborough score. And bear in mind, they are a League Two side. So realistically, they are the smaller club coming in. Now, what I'd say is that I think it's one of the best draws we could have got, being brutally honest. I didn't think it at the time, but retrospectively, I've looked back. Now, there are several types of draw you get in the FA Cup first round. You get a non-league team. And now, if they're away, you go into a tight little ground, you go into their pitch, you go into their environment. Whether fans were allowed in or not is probably irrelevant. You go in somewhere where you are out of your comfort zone, especially if you're the bigger club. And bear in mind, we were the biggest club in terms of league position in the draw. That's a banana skin. So for me, although yes, you kind of want it because you kind of want to go to those grounds and think we can beat those. If you have them away, real banana skin. If you have them at home, okay, you've got the advantage of playing on your own pitch, potentially having your own crowd. But at the same time, the plucky underdog, we've seen it before, can come and do damage. I think when Dagenham came to us when we were in the 4th division, so whatever it's called at the time, they beat us 1-0. Matthew Gent let it through his hands. Fight can get you everywhere. Stevenage, on the other hand, came to us, I think, when they were top of the conference and we were struggling in what is the 3rd tier now, and we beat them 4-1. So it can go either way. If you're in League One, probably what you want is a League Two club, ideally a struggling League Two club. But even then, you might, if you're a footballing team like we are, and you get a team that are going to come and they're full of angry bruisers and people who they want to get the ball forward, they want to shake up some of your young players, which bear in mind we've got. It would be the type of experience that I think again could lead to a shock. Then there's the Forest Greens. So you get a team that are in the division below you. They play nice football. They play football the same way you do. They're not going to be as physical, I don't think, might be wrong, but they're not going to be as physical as you are, or as somebody like, let's say, Stevenage might be, because they try and do it the right way. So they're going to come, I think, and try and out-football us. That's a worry if I were a Forest Green fan, because the one thing that I think won't beat us this season is a team who have come from the lower divisions or come from the lower reaches of our division to come and try and out-football us. We football fine. We play football well. When other teams are playing football against us, we do it very well. The key win is going to be them closing us down quick. They're going to have lots of energy. We saw it from Portsmouth on Tuesday night. When we get the ball, you have to hunt in packs and you have to close us down. But in doing that, you could leave space. So if you get it wrong, then the space is behind and we're away. So I actually think, arguably, it's one of the best draws we could have got. It could have been slightly better, admittedly. We could perhaps have had, footballing side from the National League. I don't know. And just on that as well, the non-elite teams that are allowed to play in this competition, but have had their domestic football suspended because of the lockdown, that's really interesting, because they're going to be fit and fresh. They're not going to have had to play on Tuesday night. Some of them might be part-time. They might have been at work all week, but they're not going to have had to have played games last weekend on Tuesday. Do you know what I mean? So I think that could be an interesting angle for other teams. Not for us. We've got Forest Green. Another big point before I move on. I think somebody's ringing me. 10,000 steps I've just done, apparently. I've moved in 24 minutes. So the other thing that I think is going to be really interesting is the team selection. Here's why. We don't play a league game after this until Gillingham. After the Portsmouth game, we had 10-12-day layoff until Gillingham. After Gillingham, we've got the EFL Trophy, which will be reserved, as much as we can, a reserve side. I think it's a dead rubber. So it's not going to matter all that much. And then we've got a bit of a break until we play, I think, Accrington potentially next. No, it's Accrington and Swindon, I think. Michael's got some big choices to make. The FA Cup, and I've got some figures here. The FA Cup, if we beat Forest Green, 17 grand in the bank, 16-9, something or other. If we then get a draw in the next round that we can win and win it, 25 grand in the bank. So what have you got there? 30, 40 grand in the bank. Very interesting. Third round win, 82 grand. You win 3 games in the FA Cup, £125,000. You are not telling me there are not people behind the scenes at Lincoln City who are going to be saying to Michael, we need to win this. This is a winnable game and we need to win it. That's why I don't think you'll see, and this is no disrespect to these two players, I think it's why you'll not see Zach Elbouzedi. It's why you'll not see Remy Howarth. They'll be on the bench. If we're doing well, they might come on. I think Michael's got to go as strong as he can for this game. They've got a week after this. So if the players are fit but tired, James Jones, Conor McGrandles, Tom Hopper, Harry Anderson, this is the game where they can have a week off after it. I firmly believe and hope that we've got to play a really strong side for this game. Really strong side. I'll turn my notes over now. So what do I think? Well, in goal, 2 choices, Ethan Ross or Alex Palmer. Gut feeling is Palmer. He's got to win the game. No disrespect to Ethan Ross. I'm not saying he's a bad goalkeeper. Palmer's done nothing wrong. The keeper doesn't run around an awful lot, and keepers might chastise me for this. Why do they need a rest? So I'd play Alex Palmer. Yeah, I think Palmer's a top keeper. I think we're seeing it. I think there's been games that we've won this year where just his presence in and around the area, just his command of his area, just how calm, how clever he just works. He's actually an unsung hero of a goalkeeper, because when he comes and claims a cross, people just go, keeper's got the cross. Must have been either a bad cross or, keeper should get the cross. But in actual fact, in previous years, we have had people who do not command their area particularly well. And some of the best goalkeepers that Lincoln City have ever had, people criticise their command of the keeper and the area. And one of those was Alan Marriott, a phenomenal keeper. But when we did our top 100, somebody commented, but he didn't command his area all that well. Alex Palmer does it all. I think he's probably, pound for pound, one of the best keepers I've ever seen at Lincoln. And as yet, we haven't seen him, I don't think, in full flight. Even when you go back to the likes of Rob Birch, was a really good keeper, but could be beaten from range. The only goals that have beaten Palmer this season, when you've looked at them, I think have been unstoppable ones. For me, he's got to play. He's got to play. This isn't the EFL Trophy. This is the FA Cup. Ethan Ross, play against Man City. Absolutely no problem at all. Play Sam Long against Man City because we're already through. No problem at all. Tomorrow, today, whenever you're listening to this, yesterday, you play Alex Palmer. Now, across the defence, we've got problems, but we've got options. We know Joe Walsh won't play. We're 99% sure, I think, Lewis Monsma won't play. They're saying 2 to 3 weeks. Lewis said on Tuesday night that it was just a couple of days and he was rested as a precaution. I don't think Lewis will play either. So that means Adam Jackson almost certain to play in the centre of defence. Who plays around him? Well, look, there's all sorts of options here. TJ Ioma, I think he's likely to play tomorrow. I could see an argument for resting him. I think he's likely to play. I think he's likely to play at right back. I think Robbie Gotts' performance at right back perhaps may have given Michael food for thought in terms of Gotts' game time. Maybe the lad needs some confidence. And we could play Gotts at right back and then Ioma in the centre. I don't think Ioma played all that badly. But when you flip it over on the other side, Max Melbourne was on the bench in midweek, so he should be fit and available. That gives us a couple of options. Gives you Max on the left and Sean Rowan in the centre of defence. Sean Rowan naturally left-sided as well, so it gives us that balance. I think Rowan's an excellent footballer. And although I think he's had not bad games, but he's been troubled in games at left-back, I'd love to see him play at centre back. I could see that happening. That collection, let's say Ioma, Melbourne, Jackson, and Rowan, frees up Teo Eden. Now, Teo Eden's a midfielder. Midfield is where we could perhaps do with giving some players a little bit of time off. So that's an option. You could play Teo Eden at left back, tuck Max Melbourne into left centre back and take Sean Rowan back out of the firing line. Could play Robbie Gotts at right back, play TJ Ioma and Adam Jackson in the centre, and then you've got a couple of choices at left back in Max Melbourne and Theo Eden. So I don't know what your preferred ideas are. 32 of you are watching at the moment, which is fantastic. If you think, if you would like to suggest a defence to me, drop it in the comments and I'll read them out in a short while. I'll move into the midfield in the meantime. Now, what I'm assuming, the one I'm actually going to go with, I'm going with Melbourne on the left, Rowan Jackson in the middle, and Ioma on the right. That's my prediction, which gives us all manner of choices in the middle of the park, because it gives us James Jones, Conor McGrandles, George Grant, Robbie Gotts, Theo Eden, arguably, potentially Remy Howarth, but I can't see it. So I think you're going to pick 3 from 5. Now, I think George Grant will start the game tomorrow because I think he's too integral to what we do. Liam Bridcut's not fit. George Grant is the vice-captain, so to speak. I don't think Michael's going to risk taking too many key players out of the game. Grant at 6 for me. Whether that's too deep or not, I don't know. But with Winchester and Adams playing where they do, it's going to be important that we've got some creativity in the 2 midfielders ahead. But it's also going to be important to link that defence in the midfield. I think it's massively, massively important that we do that. George Grant does it better than anyone other than Liam Bridcut. For me, Grant starts, he's captain. So then you've got 2 attacking midfield roles, essentially. You know, it's the 8s, it's the box-to-boxes, and that would be James Jones, Conor McGrandles, Theo Eden potentially, or Robbie Gotts. I think Robbie Gotts starts. I think he starts in midfield tomorrow. I think one of McGrandles or Jones starts with a view to replacing them after however 60 minutes or so with either the other one or with Theo Eden. The reason I think Robbie Gotts starts is he's got to get game time for us. And when we've got full complement of 11, at the moment, he hasn't done enough to dislodge people. Michael promotes youth. He wants youth and young players to believe they can get into the team. He doesn't want players to be affected by what has gone before. And Gotts was average at best at the weekend. But I've heard he's a great lad, good footballer, prefers to be in the midfield. I think Michael will see this as an opportunity to raise his spirits, to play him in the position he's good in, which Marcelo Bielsa, I think, said that he's definitely an 8, a box-to-box. I think he'll stick Gotts in there, especially when the physicality of Adams and Winchester, although it's there, I think it isn't the kind of physicality that you might have got from 2 non-league under 6s who, you know, are less finesse and more fight. I think those 2 are footballers as well. So I think it would be an interesting matchup. I'm going to go with Gotts, and I'm not sure if it might be James Jones. I still think there's an element of a stronger side to be put out. I think he'll play Jones or McGrandles. I think McGrandles has been a little bit hit and miss over the recent weeks. Probably just needs a bit of a break, but the football will suit him more. As for Theo Eden, again, I think he's been in and out. There is a massive shout that we might play Eden. If we play Eden, I don't think we play Gotts. I don't think he goes with Grant, Gotts and Eden, because I think you change too much. This is a well-oiled machine. If you change too much and it starts to slow down, it starts to chug a little bit, we could be on the hands of an upset. And 3 defeats in 3, one of them in the FA Cup, where we'd only come out with whatever the losers get, £8,000, I don't know. I don't think that would be the result that Michael would want. Before we carry on, I've got Rich Poole has said he thinks Ioma, Jackson, Rowan and Melbourne, which is the same as me. I've got Jake thinking Ioma, Jackson, Rowan and Melbourne. So it seems like it's quite a positive choice for me. He also thinks Theo Eden, Gotts and George Grant in midfield. And Dave Roberts would like to see Robbie Gotts in midfield. I think he will do. Now, just to touch on Jake there's picked in attack Archibald, Sewell and Anderson. Not going to be those, I'm afraid, because Jamie Sewell, I've read today, is out for 2 to 3 weeks. He won't play. Callum Morton, who knows? He won't play. So really, we're going to go 3 up top. And I think, earlier, back 3, Richard Cross said, I don't think we'll change the setup, to be honest, not at this stage. We might trial it in an EFL Trophy game, but in a game that I think is almost as important as a league game this weekend. I don't think we'll experiment that much. So across the front 3, there's definitely going to be no Jamie Sewell. There's definitely going to be no Callum Morton. I think Tom Hopper might get a rest. I think Anthony Scully might play as the number 9. It would probably be a good game for Hopper, to be honest. And there might be an argument that with getting his goal against Portsmouth, for me, a striker scores when he's confident. It'd be a great opportunity to get Hops in there again against the back three, get the wide players asking questions, running in the channels, and get Hops in and around the area to get a second goal in 2 games, and maybe fire that then on to when we play Gillingham, because that's going to be a really different prospect. So Scully or Hopper? I think if you play Hops at 9, you probably play Scully on the right. I personally wouldn't. I'd play Harry Anderson. He had a rest in midweek. Harry's pace is phenomenal. Again, a game that you've got to win. I'd really definitely play Harry. Scully or Hops? I'd like to see Hops. I think Scully. And then on the left-hand side for me, Theo Archibald. And every time I've seen Theo Archibald come on, obviously he had badness against Doncaster. But I like him. He's direct. He's athletic. He's full of running. And if we are without Brennan Johnson this weekend, then the potential is, I think, that Archibald plays. I'm not sure about the Brennan Johnson situation. I was looking before I came. It's my understanding, I think, that after Saturday he goes away for international duty and misses Gillingham. I'm not sure he misses this weekend or not. With that in mind, with him missing Gillingham, it might be Brennan Johnson. So we might actually go with Brennan Johnson on through the 9, and then Archibald and Harry Anderson. And if you talk about Archibald on the left, Harry Anderson on the right, and Brennan Johnson through the centre, I dare wager we've never had a centre forward line, certainly not in my lifetime, with as much pace as that, with as much direct running as that. That's going to ask questions of Forest Green. So many options that are forced by injury. And I think that's the sad thing. I think without the injuries, Callum Morton plays. I think without the injuries, Lewis Monsman definitely plays. Joe Walsh potentially plays. Without the injuries, Liam Bridcott definitely plays. But we've got injuries. You can't say without injuries. It's like saying, if I'd got 5 numbers on the lottery, I'd win a lot of money. Yeah, but I didn't get 5 numbers, so I didn't win a lot of money. So we've got the injuries. You live with the injuries. You deal with the injuries. You deal with not getting 5 numbers on the lottery. And there you go. That's what it is. I'm not going to do a prediction right now because I'll be talking to Sam Ashu on Matchday Live, doubtless today, whenever you're listening to it, the podcast. So I'll be talking to him probably a little bit more in depth, and we'll be looking back, I think, a little bit more in depth at Portsmouth. Just going to go to a few more of the comments now. I've got Jim Rock, back 4 of Ioma, Rowan, Jackson and Eden. That's interesting. Eden at left back. Problem we'll be dealing with Matt in the air, plus his hold-up play may require us to double up on him when he played against us for Grimsby. Interesting point. Absolutely. His hold-up play is going to be big. That's going to be an interesting battle. And if they do play the 1 with 2 behind, as I say, then it's going to have a 3-man attack looking at getting in. There's going to be a lot of emphasis on George Grant, which is why I'm putting him in the 6 rather than, let's say, an Eden or a McGrandles. Because I think probably the way we've seen the games go recently, Grant is the best in that position outside of Bridcott. McGrandles perhaps should be, but I think that Grant probably is. Jake has said, can we not call Jill's game off? I've not seen all of the call-ups as yet, Jake, so I don't know. I've only seen Brennan Johnson's call-up. But if Aaron Lewis is called up, that wouldn't matter because he's on loan at Newport, so he's not classed as our player. So it would depend who else we're going to see called up outside of that. Can't call a game off just for having Brennan Johnson called up. I'm not sure who else would be. Zach Elbazedi potentially. If Elbazedi and Scully were, I still think there's a problem because I think you get the games called off when a player has played a certain amount of games for you or has featured in a game or 2. Okay, Jake, so you've corrected me. Zach and Scully have both been selected. I think to call the dual game off, I think Zach would have to come on tomorrow because he hasn't featured in a game for us going into the current run. So, again, I'm happy to be corrected on that, but I think we couldn't call the last game off when we missed Brennan Johnson, which wasn't Blackpool. Oh, hang on. Breaking news. The game has been called off. Is that breaking news? Look, this is going to be absolutely great podcasting and live. Lincoln versus Gillingham news. Okay, doesn't say it's been called off on there. Carl, if you can, Mercer said the game's been called off. If you can let me know where you've seen that. There we go. It is just now. Breaking news. Gillingham fixture to be rearranged. Our Sky Bet League One fixture against Gillingham at the Allianz Stadium next week has been postponed due to international call-ups. The Imps have had 3 players selected. I'm really interested in that. Sean Rowan has been put on standby for his first call-up by the Ireland under-21 as well. Maybe it's because Zach Elbouzedi has been on the bench for us and has not been, despite not coming on. Because I know we couldn't get the game called off before Blackpool, I want to say, because Aaron Lewis, although he had been called up along with Zach Elbouzedi and I think Brendan Johnson, we couldn't get it called off because Lewis hadn't featured at all. But I think it's maybe that was on the bench. So there you go. Breaking news, as Jake says, only on the Stacey West podcast. Brilliant stuff. So Gillingham game rearranged. Breaking news for you. I should do a little banner, really, shouldn't I? So there we go. 40 minutes of me talking without Ben, which suggests to me that in actual fact, on a normal Stacey West podcast, we actually only need to hear Ben for about 15 minutes. So I will remind him of that next time we talk. No, obviously missed him. Back to business as usual on Sunday, where we'll be dissecting Forest Green. In fact, we might not even do that now because there's no game to talk about next Saturday, is there? So, I have to do my programme piece as well. I was due to speak to Robbie Gotts on Monday. I'll have to avoid with Terry about that. There you go. Wow. Surprise. A Saturday off. Do you know what, though? Just a little bit of reaction to that. And if you want to comment, you can do. What a brilliant break that now gives us, because it means that we don't play a league match for a fortnight. And that could be great for getting Lewis Monsma back. It could be great for getting Jamie Sewell fit. I don't know, Liam Bridcut potentially as well. Because the Man City game, look, that's going to be, and this is no disrespect to these players, but that's going to definitely be Remy Howarth. Don't know if Zach will be back by then, to be honest, but it might be Zach Elbouzedi. If Sewell is fit, it would almost certainly be Sewell. If I was Michael Appleton, I'd be playing Hayden Cann. I'd be playing any of the young lads that we've got in because it doesn't matter, win, lose or draw. Okay, there's 10 grand for stake at the end of it. But I'd rather win a couple of FA Cup matches and know that we're going through to the next round anyway. So there we go. Right, so if you've got any questions or comments, I'll give you a couple of seconds to get them in. But other than that, I'm a little ruddy-faced in here at the minute because it's quite cold. I've done a lot of walks. Richard Godson says, I suppose this is the morning dog walk, only in the afternoon minus the dog. It is. The problem with the dog walks of late is that my dog is an arsehole. And he never knows where he wants to walk until we go out. So I've been loading up with I've even got it in my pocket, my clip mic. I've got I've got a selfie stick that I use. I get to the end of the driveway and the dog decides where he's going to go. If he turns left, I've got 4 mile loop to do, 3 miles of it on the road. And if the cars come, I've got to pick him up. I can't be filming. If he wants to go straight over, I can film. He hasn't wanted to go straight over for a week. In fact, he wanted to get in the car today, so we did a loop around Redhill, which was great. But again, I could only let him off a little bit, and I didn't get a great signal. So he didn't get a dog walk. There you go. Also, I'm scared of overexposure. And I don't want to do too much videoing, do I? Not with this on my top lip. And for viewers who are not viewing but listening, I'm now stroking my Jack the Ripper moustache. Right, no questions or comments come in. That's absolutely fine. Brilliant. That means I can go in and get back on with the work that pays, which Ben chose to do, over coming out and talking to you. But I love my audience. Again, in the bio, there is a link. Please do, if you've got even just a quid or two. Male mental health is massive, and there's a massive issue there. Awareness and supporting people who are suffering, and shaving my beard off earns £300 for a charity that can put that to use and maybe save a life, or maybe just pick people up off the floor when they're down. Then fantastic stuff. Jake, save the videos to me, guys. Yeah, all right, mate. To be honest, Jake, I thought you'd be working today. Otherwise, I would have messaged you to come on and give us some expert analysis. But speaking of saving the videos to you, Forest Green one, is that due soon? Anyway, great lad, Jake. Fantastic. Does some great work for us. I'm rambling now. The best thing to do is probably for me to go. So look, thank you very much. Enjoy the game tomorrow. The last football that we'll have then for 10 days or so. Gillingham fixture cancelled. So huge.